Okay, we'll get going anyway, just in the interest of time. Like I said, it is going to be recorded, so we can share it to some of those others that aren't able to make it first thing this morning. So I'm Ash Mills, Ivan Laurie to my right here, and we've got Sarah Clark online from Seed and Grain New Zealand. So Ivan's the chairperson or chairman of SGRR, and Sarah's representing the seed and grain industry who are on the SGRR board. I'm just going to start off with a short presentation, just a bit of an overview of SGRR and what the consultation is all about. And then I'll hand over to Ivan and Sarah, who you can probably direct some questions at them and myself also. And then we can go from there, really. The purpose of today really is just to try and clarify what this consultation is. So I'll just start by sharing my screen. Hopefully everyone can see that. Sarah, you got a thumbs up, you can see that? Cool. Right. Okay. So I've just kind of given the overview of this slide. It's really just to give you a bit of a indication of what seed and grain readiness and response is. Some of you may or may not know exactly what the organisation is, what the society group is. So I'm just going to go over that a little bit. So this proposal that we've got as well, the consultation on amending the existing biosecurity levy. So that's a opportunity that was offered by MPI, and it applies to us and several other sector groups, kind of all in that same situation where we have a biosecurity levy purely for readiness. So MPI have approached us just to ask whether we wanted to pursue it, hence why we've gone down the consultation route. So the aim today is to inform you and then to seek some of your feedback in discussion today, and then also in the actual consultation, which I've shared previously. Okay, so SGRR is the arable sector's biosecurity body. It was established in 2020. And again, it went through a consultation process with lots of different grower groups across the country, and was accepted by everybody, and then became established in 2020. So it represents the growers, the processors, distributors across the whole of the seed and grain supply chain in New Zealand. It's got 5 partner organisations. So it starts with the Federated Farmers Arable, United Wheat Growers Arable, United Wheat Growers of New Zealand, the Foundation for Arable Research, the New Zealand Flour Millers, and the Seed and Grain New Zealand. So together, all of these partners, they provide one clear and coordinated industry voice. This helps the sector speak consistently with the government and respond quickly when risks arise. So SGR has a formal mandate under the Government Industry Agreement, or the GIA. So we share decision making with MPI. We also share the responsibility and the costs. So this means that we take part in planning before pests arrive, and we help manage responses during the incursions and after also. Our role is active and ongoing. It's not just advisory. So just a quick flowchart there of the biosecurity governance structure. So we connect industry with government. We provide sector input into strategy, priority, and operations. We also can coordinate information between growers, member bodies, and response teams. And this structure really does help ensure decisions reflect practical on-farm realities. So since 2020, SGRR has taken part in several biosecurity responses. Through the GIA councils, we contribute to governance groups, things like the BMSB councils, Lepidoptera working groups, etc. We are involved with quite a bit behind the scenes. We provide technical knowledge to sector intelligence, and we support planning and operations, and we share agreed costs. So this does ensure the arable sector has both a voice and responsibility in outcomes. So we do have minimum commitments outside of actual responses and dealing with that sort of thing. So under the GIA, SGRR must meet several core commitments. We represent the sector nationally. We participate in readiness planning. We take part in response governance and operations. We share costs with MPI and partners. We maintain capability at all times. Importantly, these obligations exist regardless of how funding is arranged. So the current levy structure, as you might be aware of, hopefully, is set under the Biosecurity Response Arable Crops Levy Order of 2023. It's collected at the first transaction. And for arable crops, it is a small percentage of 0.1% shared between the grower and the merchant. And then for maize, it's set at the seed unit, so $0.25 per 10,000 seeds, and shared 25% of the seed company, 25% the distributor, and then 50% of the grower. So the framework and the rates already exist. And just to note there at the bottom, the maize levy was set to zero from 1st of July last year because we paid off the costs that we were obliged to meet with MPI through full armyworm. So presently, levy funds can only be used for response activities. So anything to do with response, hence the travel down to blackgrass paddocks, and any of those things, surveillance for fall armyworm that's happened previously, anything like that. So this cannot be used for readiness. Readiness work has therefore been funded by the member contributions of SGRR. This does create a bit of a gap, and our responsibility covers both readiness and response, but the levy supports only one. The separation limits kind of some of that flexibility and long-term planning, although we are still doing the readiness side as part of our commitments to that GIA. So just a couple of boxes there just to kind of highlight the difference between readiness and response. Readiness, a lot of the surveillance, the diagnostics, etc. A lot of training and education, which is actually key, not only in just kind of knowledge sharing, but is fundamentally quite important for response itself. It can create identification of pests and diseases a lot earlier and kind of nip that risk in the bud before a response can get out of hand and extremely costly. Okay, so the proposal that we've got is quite simple, really. It expands the permitted use of the levy funds. Funds can support both the readiness and response. There is no change to the rates. There's no change on how the levy is collected. There is no change to the existing framework. There is only change in scope. And that's it, really. Pretty short and sweet. And just a few points there for discussion. I'll leave this up for a few moments just so you can have a look at some of those questions, might get some of the discussion going. While you're here, flick onto the QR code if you haven't already filled in the consultation. Just click on that just so you've got it open. So after we finish the discussions, you will have a bit more of an informed view on how you should answer. There's only 5 questions to answer. It is quite simple. But I will just hand over to Ivan and Sarah now. Just if you have any questions, get them going, keep them coming.
Thank you, Ash, for that presentation, and thank you those who have joined us today. We're more than happy to answer any questions regarding this consultation that you might have either personally or that you want to pass on to your respective organizations whom I imagine you are representing today. So yes, please fire away. As Ash says, this is really not materially going to change any costs for the sector. The caps remain exactly the same. I had a grower gave me a call on Thursday just wanting to know a little bit more about it, and was satisfied in the sense that we weren't trying to increase any levies or double up on any collection of monies for this. It's really just to be able to use a part of the levy that comes in to do prevention rather than ambulance at the bottom of the cliff stuff. So yes, please ask questions.
Ed, go ahead.
Yeah, Ash, I'm just interested to know about, you mentioned the training and education, what you think that would entail.
I mean, personally, I'd like to kind of engage with a lot of the agronomists that are out and about. An example for me is through blackgrass, where some of the agronomists that were involved that were managing particular paddocks that ended up finding the pest weed, they didn't actually know what it was. Obviously, a little bit of research after it was found was great, but yeah, there's a lot of people, there's a lot of pests, there's a lot of diseases that are out there. There's probably about 70 or 80 that are on the SGRR pest list that we see as quite alarming to the arable industry in New Zealand. That's just at first glance, the first bit of the horizon scanning there, but once we've kind of filtered off maybe say a top 10, I do think that there's a great opportunity for sharing that, either that's through resources, more webinars, in-person meetings or workshops, just to kind of share some of the information that we already know. And then, yeah, maybe there's an opportunity to look into some of the diagnostics or some of the other tools that could be available, just to share that with some of the other industry members. Try and help really. A lot of it for me is trying to share what things look like. The IDs are really quite good to share with the people in the field, the growers and the reps, because that is that first opportunity once it is past the border anyway. So I don't know if that answers that question. There's probably some other opportunities for education as well, but that's probably the key one for me.
So you see that being led by, the education piece being led by FAR?
Maybe I can answer that, Ed. No, the answer is when FAR is the best placed organization as one of the members of SGNZ to do it, it would be FAR. But I think, for example, let's give a hypothetical example that this was related to seed samples and looking at samples rather than the agronomy, then it could be members of Seed and Grain Readiness and Seed and Grain New Zealand who'd be better placed to do that. And or if it was exclusively related to something that affected flour milling or wheat quality, then it might revert to either United Wheat Growers or the flour millers. So I think just because of FAR's reach and because of Ash's dual role as Biosecurity Officer at FAR and also for Seed and Grain Readiness and Response, that this could be used as an effective channel for doing some of that education. There's also written material, things like we're doing today, webinars, short video clips that, for example, Ash has done on fall armyworm in the past. All of that is part of, I think, the education process.
Okay.
Any other questions?
So, yeah, Ivan and Ash, you guys are obviously, SGRR is obviously supportive of this, or this is obviously the direction that you want to go. What kind of, what sort of restriction or opposition to this idea is there, or what's the process here that you're asking for?
So Ed, we haven't received any opposition to this so far. What MPI has required us to do is to go out and consult with the growers, with the seed merchants, with the flour millers, with the United Wheat Growers, levy payers, to ensure that that there isn't strong opposition to this. This pretty much follows suit with what other sector organizations have done. Hindsight is great. When we started talking about seed and grain readiness and response, you may or may not remember, this was back in 2014, 2015. Nick Pike and I were involved in it from an AFIC perspective in getting things moving at the time. And we didn't fully understand everything about biosecurity that we understand today, especially how important that readiness piece really is. Because if you get the readiness piece done well, then your response costs go down because there's less trial and error. When something arrives at your doorstep, you are already informed as to what to do. And we've learned a bit of that with, for example, with blackgrass over time, as we have successive incursions, that you start to have a bit of a blueprint of what needs to be done. Hindsight is great. I think if we'd originally done the consultation back when it was done in 2015, 2016 to include readiness, we would have done it. We didn't do it at that period, and MPI has asked us if we wanted to align with the other sectors to go out and do it now. So this is what we're complying with, going out with that consultation.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah. And so you wouldn't anticipate, obviously the costs won't change, but obviously probably as that grower that rang you the other day would have been asking, like, you're not anticipating needing a whole lot more funding than's currently there to be able to do this.
Which was a perfectly legitimate question. I mean, I would ask exactly the same question. Is this an excuse to set up another levy and collect more money off growers and merchants? No, it isn't. It is more a sensible way in which to use the funding from SGRR, because I'll explain. At the moment, to cover readiness costs, it means that those specific costs that can't be covered through the current levy have to be covered by the member organizations anyway. So that means that FAR has to contribute about 40% of the costs of running seed and grain readiness and response for the readiness bit. So does Seed and Grain New Zealand, so does Feds, and the flour millers, and then United Wheat Growers is exempt, but that's a special situation because they're represented at the board, but they are strictly for the insurance, wheat insurance levy. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, the cost is not going to change. It's just that instead of passing the cost back to the member organizations as such, it can just be used out of that levy, which is relatively small, and I think
Yeah.
that's the principle.
Yeah, no. Good as gold.
Ed?
Yeah, obviously, Ivan and Ash are very, you're obviously very close to this, and so you've got a, very good, feel for it. So, if you feel it's a need, well, I'm ultimately in support of that. However, just as I put in my feedback, I think we just need to be mindful that we don't sort of create a fund, and then people see what might be in the fund, and then we end up with a bit of mission creep.
Yeah.
Effectively of stuff that's, I mean, obviously Ash understands it, Ivan understands it, we all understand it, but 5 years time, 10 years time, we've got different personnel around the table, and then all of a sudden it might be, trips to Europe to look at what they do, and sort of things like that. I think we need to have a fairly tight scope.
Ed, I think you're right. Look, as chair of Seed and Grain Readiness and Response currently, it is up to the board to also set up and make decisions around funding and the rules around funding. So those that represent each member organization at the board, the 5 organizations, need to be very clear back to their own membership and also to the board as to what those intentions are. So I think it's quite easily minuted at the board. In any case, Ed, there is a cap, and that cap was set at doesn't matter how big the responses were or how big the potential for readiness is, Seed and Grain Readiness and Response cannot charge more than 1% of the total amount of a crop for the year. So even if everybody decided to go ballistic, it would never be over 1%, and we're currently using less than 10% of that ability.
Yeah, I think an example of the 2021 blackgrass response, which is quite a significant response. The costs, go back to that slide, but in total we're looking at about $1 million since 2021 for the duration of that whole response. So that's anticipated to come to a close in about 2027. Final paddocks have finished their we don't see that we really need to increase that to anywhere near 1%. 0.1% is been seen to be more than appropriate in kind of meeting those cost shares with MPI. Unfortunately, there seems to be quite a lot of responses and a lot of things happening in this changing climate and this changing world. So hopefully we don't get too many of them. The idea would also be that in the future, if we have years where there are no responses, and that's obviously the goal with some of the readiness work, that we would be able to switch off the Arable Crops Levy too. Like Ivan said, there is a little bit of a cap that's there, and the way that we have switched off the maize levy for fairness at the end of the financial year has meant that there's a tiny little bit of reserves that sat there, which would just be used at the moment in the event of another maize incursion. So we still wouldn't be able, or we wouldn't have to switch that on unless cost shares had exceeded that amount. So yeah, it's not that we're trying to create a huge bank balance and kind of look at interest or anything like that. We will use the money accordingly. Yeah.
And just to, I guess, show it as a bit of an example, Ed, the current yellow-legged hornet response, of which we are indirect beneficiaries as part of the pollination required for our sector, we've committed $20,000 to that response as a contribution from the arable sector. I believe the total cost so far in that response is in the order of $8 million. So, as you can see, we're not huge. We're not a huge party. However, we always want to be sitting at the table and provide advice where possible, because in this particular case, with the Hornet, if the whole of our bee industry gets wiped out in New Zealand, we are under threat. So we'd better be very sure that we're having a say and that we're prepared for what might happen. And unless you're sitting at the table, you do not get direct contact to the intimate detail of what's going on.
Ivan, I think sort of publication of that would be interesting for the group, because I mean, I didn't know that had been contributed. I'm not sure that had been put out to the group as such, but I think, you know, they would be interested to know that.
Yep.
So the reason that we kind of haven't shared that just yet is we're still undergoing the operational agreement side of it, so the paperwork side of things with GIA and with MPI. So that is I think it's in the final stages of getting that signed, and then we would probably be legally allowed to share that on paper. But it is something that we would be doing. It's just in that negotiation stage with MPI with regards to the operational agreement. But Ivan's right. We will be there will be 20,000 from will go towards that.
Another thing that might help you as organizations pass this on to your members is that when SGRR joins a response or has readiness activities, when we're more than often not alone in this. So, for example, in the yellow-legged hornet response, of the plant-based industries, the main partner at the moment is the kiwi fruit industry. Obviously, they've got it at their doorstep, and they're their main interested party. And so they also have a proportional contribution to the project, which is much larger than ours. And in the case where there is a party that doesn't have a formal organization, which is the current situation with the beekeepers, then it's actually who picks up that. That's why in the current scenario, MPI is picking up the lion's share of the cost, because they're also covering the whole honey and bee industry share of that process.
Yeah, I think just keeping everyone informed of what the good work that's being done and then where the money's being spent, I think that would be quite valuable. I know it's a bit more admin, obviously.
Sure. No, I think it's a very valid point. As I say, I mean, in real terms, the overwhelming majority of what we have captured from SGRR has been spent on the blackgrass, and then strictly from the maize was for the 1 year duration that we had the fall armyworm response. That's where that funding went, and the rest is, as I say, the rest is very minor or small contributions to larger biosecurity responses or readiness at New Zealand level. So brown marmorated stinkbug is an example. This yellow-legged hornet is another one.
Yeah, BMSB would be a good example. Each year, just in readiness, as part of the operational agreement, there's just over $500,000 is provided for that group. SGRR provides about, I think it's about 5,000 or 6,000 each year, just due to the cost sharing and the risk to our industry. There is a risk. It's reasonably small in comparison with apples and pears or kiwi fruit or New Zealand wine. Hence why we don't pay very much, but they pay a lot. yet we're still involved in those decisions, and we're still privy to all of the information and the research that's going on, as well as kind of creating those relationships with other biosecurity personnel in different sectors, which is, I don't know, I don't think money can really, you can't put a figure on some of that stuff. But yeah, that's a really good example of how things have kind of been shared about when it comes to readiness, and the costs are reasonably insignificant on using that as an example. Yet we do get a lot out of it. Well, we get the same out of it that some of those other bigger players have as well. Sarah.
Thanks, Ash. I just wondered if I could put another lens across this by, and correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that at the moment, because we aren't able to use any of the levy funds for readiness activity, we're a bit hamstrung. We don't have freedom to operate that we might like to. So for instance, as you mentioned, there's some funds left over from the maize event incursion, but we cannot use that for doing any readiness work for a future maize pest. And so without that authority to use or ability to use those funds for readiness, the way I see it is we just don't have freedom to operate and do sensible sort of insurance policy like activity that would, be of benefit.
Yeah, and it relies on the members, as I said before. Literally, if we wanted to do some more readiness work for, say, maize, at this stage, we would have to ask Seed and Grain New Zealand to write a check. We would have to ask FAR to write a check. We would have to ask Federated Farmers to write a check to put money towards that. In this particular case, it wouldn't affect the flour millers or United Wheat Growers because it's not a wheat-related readiness activity. But if it was, each member party, basically has to write a check out to fund those readiness activities throughout the year. Whereas by using the levy money, you can, to an extent, I guess, lack of a better word, is dilute the financial pressure on the member organizations, which are generally cash strapped anyway, to use that for specific purposes.
Yeah, I completely agree with that and stuff. I agree with the fact that the readiness work will probably ultimately end up cheaper if there's incursions that are cut off and never actually happen. There's absolutely no doubt about that. But I would want to be careful that we don't go and just try and find things to spend that money on because the money's there. Because, like for maize, for example, the maize levy, I would imagine the maize levy just all comes in the spring, doesn't it? With seed sales. So if something you want to have a little bit of, if you've got a little bit of money there, that's good. There's no point in just using it because it's there.
No, as I said, and at the moment the levy is switched off because there is no response.
But if an incursion happened today and there was zero sitting in the maize thing, there's no levy, and you turned the levy back on, no levy will come in until November, will it?
No, but I'll also explain that MPI will fund the response, and then they will charge us retrospectively. In saying that, they've been very good because, for example, until we got the levy up and running for blackgrass, the whole response had already incurred in about $1 million worth of cost, of which our share was, less than half. But the response went ahead, and then all that happens is MPI then invoices us for the costs that they've had so far. And normally they are flexible in the sense that we've said to them, look, we don't have $1 million sitting around for a response in case it happens, and that's never going to happen. That's not the way we're going to operate. So what happens effectively is they operate as an intermediary finance for the response, and then they charge the involved parties back to pay as best we can. In our case with Blackgrass, we said, well, that's quite a lot of money, and we offered to pay it over 2 years. It'll probably be, with the new incursion from 2025, it'll probably be spread out over 4 years or something like that, the cost, so we don't have to put a lump sum up.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's always going to be so much cheaper to focus more on the readiness.
Yep.
Mm.
I'll just add to the readiness side of things. It took a couple of years to get across the line, but SGRR had developed an operational agreement with MPI for the pest list that I described earlier on, or mentioned earlier on. Within that, there's 20 of those pests are unwanted organisms, which means that we can now cost share again with MPI any readiness work. So it's just more bang for buck really with any readiness money that or any levy money that we could potentially use for readiness. It goes twice as far when it comes to any work to do with specific organisms on that operational agreement. Okay. Anybody got any other questions for us?
No. Well, I do have a request. Poor Ash has been working hard trying to get people to respond, positively or negatively, it doesn't matter. We want people to have their say and to respond, and the amount of responses so far have been very, very low. Really low. I think we were at 12 or
we're about 20.
Yeah, last week. I mean, it's very low considering this has gone out to over 3,000 separate parties. So really important that you encourage your members, your colleagues on the different boards to participate and to give feedback if possible.
Yeah, so the consultation, I've extended it until the very beginning of March, so there's a little bit less than a month to go. So please do visit the website, sgrr.org.nz. The consultation documents are there for any information, and the link you can follow to fill out the consultation itself. You share that with anybody, and also there's been a lot of circulars going around, a lot of emails going around sharing the information of how to fill it in. So please do share that if you have an opportunity. That would be greatly appreciated. Okay. Hey, thanks so much everyone for joining and taking a bit of time out of your day to hear us ramble on. Much appreciated, and have a great Monday. Thanks.
Thanks, Ash.